So here's our framed sign that we're doing. First, we're going to paint the frame part, and then we'll get to the middle here. So all I did was watered down some of the chocolate. You want it very thin, kind of like stain. Instead of using the Dixie Belle stain, I just used the Dixie Belle chocolate chalk mineral paint and watered it down. I probably could have watered it down more. And the way that I made this video, it was really hard for me to kind of reach and do everything, so it looks very awkward. When you're doing it, it'll be a lot easier. And I did add a little bit too much paint here and there, which is fine. You just use a little spritzer bottle, thin it out, and you'll use an old sock or old t-shirt or something like that. See right there, I got way too much paint right there, which is fine. I'll just spray it with some water and kind of thin it out, and it's okay for those ends to be a little bit darker. They're not going to be as noticeable, and you can, with the Dixie Belle paint, always go back and kind of thin it out. I like to get those ends too right in the crack where the sign is going to go to, just because you're going to see a little bit of it, not a bunch, but depending on what color you're using, you want to make sure that you get that color in there. See how it gives it a nice stained look here. Always, as you're going along, make sure you get any drips, because the paint will dry quickly even though it's wet, and you don't want darker spots. So you just kind of keep painting it on and wiping it back. So here you can see a little bit better how I try to get in the crack there too. Well, I guess not yet, sorry. Right here, I put way too much paint on there, as you can see. But I'll wipe it back. So here's the side. And see how it's dripping off? And again, it's very awkward because I have the camera like in front of me and then this in front of me, so it's kind of hard to do this. There we go. There's how I got in the crack there. You just want to kind of get in there just a little bit. You don't have to get too far. And I sprayed this to get a little bit extra paint off. And then you just kind of keep going. And then you go finish the rest of them, let them dry. And you can paint the middle while they are drying. There it is. Here's the middle. You do always want to make sure that you have a damp brush. So we're just using the 1-inch chip brush here. Spritzing the brush. It doesn't have to be soaking wet. We're just spritzing it here. And then I'm just kind of painting it on. Again, this is a little awkward because it is in front of me. Later in the video, when I paint the second side, you'll see a better view, but I do like to go all the way across. I just couldn't reach with the way that the camera was in front of me this way, so I did end up getting a different tripod so you guys could see better. But you do want to make long strokes all the way across the piece whenever you are painting, no matter what it is. That way you don't have brush stroke marks in the middle. And just kind of keep painting, and you'll notice I go in like different directions in some places just because on the edges it's easier to do that. But you always want to go back and paint in one direction so you don't have paint that's showing in different directions. And I do use water to kind of spritz it here and there. I'm not soaking it. This is a mister bottle, not like a regular spray bottle. So it's just a light mist because the paint will, start to dry as you're going along, and you want to make sure that it stays wet to avoid any of those brush stroke marks. And there, so you can kind of see some of the brush strokes there. I did get a piece of the brush stuck on there that I missed, if you saw that, but I did get it off later after it dried. And I did end up sanding this after it dried just because I wanted it to be smoother for the stencil application. So you just want to use a little, 220 grit piece of sandpaper, or you could even use 150, but that might be too rough. 220 is really good to use. And just let that dry. here's the second side here. So you'll see how you want to go kind of all the way across. And this video is sped up, so no, I don't move this fast when I paint. You just kind of go all the way across. And when you do get to the edges, you want to make sure that you don't have anything dripping over. For this particular project, it doesn't matter too much, but you don't want drips on the edges. So you kind of always want to make sure that you're brushing outwards instead of starting at the edge exactly. And see, this was much quicker trying to do it this way than I was the other way. I'm glad I found my other tripod to give a better view. And there it is, you just let it dry. So here it is, all dry. We're going to glue it together. If you notice, there's a fatter piece and a smaller piece to the frame. That fatter piece is going to go up. That is your front. This actually could be two-sided, but you want to make sure that those are all going the same way. You don't want them to be accidentally opposite. But here I'm just putting glue down in the cracks. My glue is just about gone in this bottle, so I was having, you can see right there where I squeezed it, I was having some issues. And here I put the centerpiece down in too far. I wasn't meaning to push it down in there. It does not go all the way down in. The frame does not go, like they don't end up, I guess, flush. Well, I don't really know how to explain, but they aren't going to completely go in those slots. So you want to be careful with that. Just put it in a little bit. It is clear glue here, but you'll be able to see, you know, the difference. So you just kind of put on one side at a time. You might have to kind of finagle it a little bit and try to make sure it's straight as you're going. But at the end here, we'll make sure that everything is straight, and it will go in there fairly easy. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I did put on the shorter pieces, I put glue on the ends there, so that way when it touches the longer pieces, it'll be good. And then I just kind of work with it and make sure that it's all straight. And you can push on the longer pieces on those sides, push those together to make sure that it's together. You could also use books while it's drying to kind of push it together on the sides, or large rubber bands. I wasn't able to find large rubber bands to do this, but it'll dry fine just that way. Just make sure it's nice and dry before you start the stenciling part. And I did cut around the stencil a little bit just because I wanted to make sure that it fit in there good. And then we'll use some of the scrap pieces here to help us get the stencil on. It did take me several tries to make sure that this was straight. I skipped through a lot of it, but here you just kind of put a piece of the stencil on one side and a piece on the other side, and then we'll do the half and half method to peel it off. So I probably took me 5 tries to get it straight, to make sure that I wanted it straight, but I cut that part out so you guys didn't have to watch it. So here we're just doing the half and half. You want to make sure that tape stays down while you cut that backing off, and then you can peel it up once you get half of it stuck down. You do want to do this slowly. It looks like I'm going fast, but I'm not, because the video is sped up, because it's kind of boring to watch it at regular speed, in my opinion. So here I'm just trying to figure out what colors I really want, based off of, you know, the heart and the bead garland. And if you notice there, I cut off the end of my sponge. That is just so I'm not using so many sponges for so many, you know, different colors. And here I did slow this down a little bit here. You want to, when you pull the tape off, you're having it flat. Make sure that everything stays stuck down, and you go really slow to peel it off. If anything starts to come up, you just push it down. But you go really slow with it and keep it nice and flat. Keeping it flat is really the key to making sure that everything stays down. If you're pulling up on it, you're probably going to pull up the stencil, so you don't want to do that. And here the tape decided that it was going to rip on me and just kept ripping on me, so I just went with it. Again, just make sure you're going slow with it. It's not a race. Some people find this frustrating, some people find it relaxing. I think it's fun. And there I just made sure that all that stuck down. And now we're ready to paint. If you have, see how right there where it's close to the edge, just put some of that tape or vinyl down there. We're going to use the fat part of the sponge. And just a teeny bit of paint. You don't need a whole lot of paint. There's not very much paint right there on my plate if you can see it. I just used the sponge to kind of wipe off the excess on the paint bottle. And we're going to dip it in. And then you're going to dab it off. See, that's too much paint there. You just dab it off. You don't want very much paint. And then you lightly dab it onto the letters. You don't go super fast. You don't push on it. And you just go really lightly. This part here is real speed. So this is how I actually, how fast I go and how I do it. Here in a minute, it's going to speed up and go super fast. Just so you don't have to keep watching it. Just make sure that you're not trying to rush it and not trying to push a bunch of paint on there. And you don't have a lot of paint, because if you do, it will seep underneath. These stencils aren't foolproof. No stencils are. So just be slow with it. Take your time and have fun and watch your edges. And then I'm going to paint the rest of it here. I did end up only doing one coat. This is the Tea Rose. It's Dixie Belle Chalk Mineral Paint Tea Rose. I did decide to use the metallic for this as well, but it didn't show up that great. So, I mean, it gave it a little extra flair, but I probably should have just used a different color. I used it for the just the chapter part. It just gave it a nice subtle extra. I also used it on the person who said this quote. Here I'm peeling it up, making sure that the color looks the way I want it to. You don't want to start peeling up everything and then realize that your color doesn't show up. So check that before you peel up. And just go slow with it. Don't try to rip it off. We don't want you ripping off any of the background paint or anything like that. That would be all bad. So I cut off the end of my sponge there again, just so you can see that. And now we're going to use the little pick that you got in your toolkit. And you just, on the edges, just kind of start pulling it up. You don't want to push it into your wood. You don't want to scratch your paint or anything. So just be gentle with it. And I've kind of sped up the video here. But this is one of my favorite parts, I would say. And if you hear snoring, it's my dog. I'm sorry. She's in the room while I'm recording the voice here, so that'll give you a nice laugh. So there you have it. It's all done. Sorry, it's cut off there a little bit, but you'll see a picture here in a minute of it all finished, and it's ready to hang. Thank you.